The coffee was coming before it arrived. James Carter saw Carol Bennett's hand move, saw the slight tilt of the wrist, saw the
Excuse
decision
me,
in
that
her
area
eyes
needs
a
a
half
barrier.
second before the
Yes,
hot
ma'am.
liquid hit
Right
his
away.
hand.
Good.
He let it happen because he needed it on the recording. "I'm so sorry," Carol said. "Not sorry at all, but this seat has been reassigned. You'll need to move to 14C. James looked at his hand, picked up a napkin from the tray, blotted slowly, deliberately, the way you do when you want every second captured clearly. Then he looked up at Carol. "You just spilled hot coffee on me. It was an accident. Now, if you could please gather your things, this is my seat. 2A. I booked it 6 weeks ago." Carol glanced at the man standing in the aisle behind her, Frank Howell, white, mid-50s, the posture of someone who had been told the problem was already handled. She looked back at James. "Sir, people like you don't usually sit up here?" Her voice dropped. "Not quieter, more pointed. I'm going to need you to move. People like you." 3 words, hanging in the first-class cabin like smoke that wouldn't clear. James didn't stand up, didn't raise his voice, didn't do a single thing Carol was counting on him to do. What Carol didn't know, what nobody on that plane knew, was that James Carter had been watching her for 18 months, not this flight specifically. All of them. He had case files on 17 Transamerica passengers, all black, all first class, all removed or relocated under circumstances that followed the same pattern. 6 of those incidents traced back to the same senior crew member, Carol Bennett. 17 incidents. 14 had chosen to come forward as plaintiffs. Flight 412 from Atlanta to New York wasn't random. James had booked this seat on this flight specifically because he knew she would be working it. The recording device in his jacket pocket had been running since the gate. He needed her to keep talking at A. The back of the first-class cabin. Renee had been watching since boarding. 14 months with Transamerica. 14 months of watching Carol work. The quick assessment when a certain type of passenger walked into first class. The decision made in 2 seconds. The quiet, efficient machinery of it. Renee had tried to say something once, 8 months in, to another senior crew member she trusted. That crew member had gone straight to Carol. The next month, Renee found herself scheduled for the worst routes, the earliest departures, the longest turnarounds. She had learned what speaking cost, so she started writing instead. The notebook in her uniform pocket was small, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. She had filled 2/3 of it. Dates, flight numbers, passenger descriptions, seat assignments before and after. What was said, what wasn't said but was understood. 23 entries, 14 months. She had never shown it to anyone. She watched Carol tip the coffee cup. Now, watched it hit James's hand, watched Carol set it, back down without blinking, and felt the notebook pressing against her. Ribs. Patricia was in seat 3B, family law attorney from Philadelphia. Magazine down the moment Carol said, "People like you." Phone out. Recording. Carol saw it. "Ma'am, recording on this aircraft is completely legal under federal aviation regulations," Patricia said. She didn't look up. Continue. Frank Howell settled into 2B, his actual assigned seat, and pulled out his phone. His thumb moved fast, confirming something already arranged. James watched from the corner of his eye. His recorder caught every sound in the cabin. Carol leaned toward Frank, low but not low enough. "Don't worry. This happens sometimes. We'll get it sorted." James heard it. He had heard variations of that sentence in 6 separate depositions. Different flights. Same crew member. Same tone. "Sir," Carol said, turning back to James, "you are holding up this flight. Every passenger on this plane is waiting because of you." "I'm sitting in my seat," James said. "You're the one holding up the flight." Carol pressed her radio. Security to first class. Passenger refusing to comply. Renee closed her eyes, felt the notebook against her ribs. Not yet. "Not yet, officer." Grant came through the boarding door 2 minutes later, broad-shouldered, measured, the particular calm of someone who had talked people down from situations they couldn't see clearly. He scanned the cabin, started toward Carol, then saw James. Stopped. "Mr. Carter." The cabin went quiet. Officer Grant. James said. Grant straightened, the involuntary posture of recognition. You represented my sister's housing discrimination case 4 years ago. Pro bono, I remember. She got her apartment back. She did. Grant turned to Carol. His voice had changed. Still professional? But different, ma'am. Can I see the reassignment documentation for this seat? Carol opened her tablet. Typed again. Her jaw was tight. The system is experiencing an issue right now. There's no reassignment. Everyone turned. Renee was standing in the middle of the aisle. She had moved without fully deciding to. Or she had decided without realizing it. Either way, there she was. I saw the screen before she turned it away, Renee said. There was no reassignment in the system. His seat was valid. Carol's voice went flat and cold. You are a junior crew member. You do not speak unless spoken to. You're done on this flight. I'll have you written up before we land. The cockpit door opened. Captain Morrison had heard the radio call. He stood in the doorway now, taking in the scene, Ms. Bennett. His voice was quiet, but it filled the cabin. You do not have the authority to terminate crew members. That decision is not yours to make, Carol turned. Saw Morrison. Said nothing. Morrison looked at Renee. Continue. Renee reached into her uniform pocket, took out the notebook, placed it on the nearest seat tray. Open. Face up. 14 months of handwriting visible. This isn't the first time, Captain. She was looking at Morrison now. Not at Carol, not at the floor. At the person who could actually do something. I've documented every time Ms. Bennett removed a black passenger from first class in the 14 months I've been on this crew. Dates, flight numbers, seat assignments before and after. Her voice was steady. The shaking had stopped somewhere between the back of the cabin and where she was standing now. I tried to report it once, 8 months in. The person I told went straight to Ms. Bennett. The next month I had the worst schedule on the roster. She paused. I should have found another way. I know that, but I kept writing it down because I didn't know what else to do with what I was seeing. She looked at the notebook on the tray. I'm prepared to lose my job, but I can't stay quiet one more time. Patricia from 3B, and I have all of that on video. Morrison walked fully into the cabin. He looked at the notebook. Looked at Renee, looked at Carol, who had been very still since the cockpit door opened. Mr. Carter, Morrison said, I understand you have something as well. James stood. My name is James Carter. I'm a civil rights attorney representing 14 plaintiffs in a federal discrimination lawsuit against Transamerica Airlines. He reached into his jacket, placed the recording device on the tray table. I've been investigating a pattern of racial discrimination in first-class seating on this airline for 18 months. I have documented 17 incidents, 6 of which occurred on flights where Ms. Bennett was the senior crew member. He looked at Carol directly. I booked seat 2A on this specific flight because the scheduling data put her here. I needed to observe her conduct firsthand. He paused. I've observed enough. The color left Carol's face, not gradually. All at once, like something had been pulled out from underneath it. The flush of certainty she'd carried since boarding drained away, and what was left was white, paper white, the white of someone who has just understood that the situation they thought they were controlling had been controlled by someone else entirely. Her hand moved to the headrest of seat, and A gripped it, her knees bent slightly, involuntary, a body registering what the mind was still catching up to. 14 years. She had done this for 14 years, and it had worked every time, because the people in those seats had calculated, correctly, every time, that the cost of fighting was higher than the cost of moving. She had read them right, every single time, until now. Grant turned to Frank. Howell. Sir, I observed your screen when you were typing earlier. I need you to hold that device. Don't lock it. Frank looked at the phone in his hand. He'd been trying to navigate to his messages since Morrison appeared. Grant's hand was already out. Frank handed it over. Grant read the message. Showed it to Morrison. From Carol Bennett. Sent before boarding. Your upgrade is confirmed. Uy. Cash has agreed. Morrison read it twice. Set the phone down on the tray beside the recording device and Renee's notebook. 3 pieces of evidence. On one tray table, he looked at Carol for a long time. Carol was still holding the headrest of 1A, both hands now, knuckles white. Her lips moved slightly, forming arguments she was running through and finding no exits. 14 years of knowing exactly what to say in every situation, and now nothing, Ms. Bennett. Morrison's voice was very quiet. You're removed from this flight effective immediately. You can't. I'm the captain of this aircraft. Final. Absolute. I absolutely can. Carol looked around the cabin, at Patricia with her phone up, at Grant with the text message, at the recording device on the tray, at Renee's notebook open beside it, 23 entries in 14 months of careful handwriting, at James Carter, sitting in seat 2A exactly where he had been since he boarded. Completely still, watching with the patience of a man who had spent 18 months preparing for this specific moment. Her hands slipped from the headrest. She walked to the door. She didn't look back. Frank. Howell stood up slowly. Didn't look at anyone either. Just picked up his bag and followed Grant off the plane. Morrison looked at James, Mr. Carter. On behalf of this crew, I apologize for what happened on this aircraft today. Don't apologize to me, James said. I have 14 clients who've been waiting 18 months for that apology. They deserve it more than I do. And he looked at the notebook still open on the tray. There are 17 passengers in my files. 14 came forward. 3 didn't. Maybe they will now. He looked at Renee. She was standing in the aisle with her hands at her sides. Still. The shaking had stopped completely. You kept this for 14 months, James said. Yes. Alone. Yes. Can I have a copy? Renee picked up the notebook. Held it out. You can have the original. I photographed every page. James took it. Held it carefully. The way you hold something that has been carried a long time and is finally going somewhere. This goes in the filing, he said. Your name goes in as a witness, not a defendant, not a suspect. A witness. Renee nodded once. The plane began to move. The federal complaint was filed. In New York 11 days later. Exhibit 15. The recording from Flight 412. Exhibit 16. The text message from Carol Bennett to Frank Howell. Exhibit 17. Renee's notebook. 23 incidents. 14 months. Names, dates, seat numbers, before and after. Carol Bennett was terminated that afternoon. FAA investigation opened within the week. The airline's attorneys spent the first 3 days determining how much they hadn't known, and the next 3 days determining how much they had. Frank Howell was refunded, banned, interviewed by federal investigators. The following Thursday, Renee was placed on paid administrative leave during the investigation, reinstated 3 months later with full seniority credit and a formal commendation in her personnel file, demonstrated integrity under pressure, cooperated with federal investigation at personal professional risk, recommended for advancement. She, read it in the break room at the Atlanta hub, stood there for a while, thinking about the 14 months before she read it, thinking about the crew member she had trusted for 8 months in, who had gone straight to Carol, thinking about the worst schedule on the roster, the early departures, the long turnarounds, thinking about all the times she had looked at the floor and the one time she hadn't. That was the story. But before you go, Carol Bennett didn't lose everything because she didn't know who James Carter was. She lost everything because of what she did when she thought he was nobody. She had done it 17 times before. 16 of those times it worked because the people in those seats had done the math quickly, quietly, the way you do when you're tired and alone and, the system isn't built for you, and decided that the cost of fighting was higher than the cost of moving. Most of them were right. That's the part that doesn't go away. Not the recording. Not Exhibit 17. Not Carol's hands on the headrest of 1A. The 16 times before this one. The people who moved. Now think about Renee. 8 months in, she tried to report it. It cost her. She went quiet. Started writing things down in a notebook because that was the only way she could live with not saying them out loud. She wasn't brave in any dramatic sense. She was a young woman in a drugstore notebook doing the only thing she could figure out how to do. And when the moment came, shaking, terrified, everything she had worked for on the line, she walked up that aisle and handed over 14 months of what she had been quietly carrying, so here's what I want to leave with you. You don't have to be James Carter to make a difference. You don't have to walk onto a plane with a recorder and 18 months of case files. Sometimes you just have to be, Renee, keep the notebook, write down what you see. And when the moment comes, and it will come, don't look at the floor, because somewhere on a plane right now, someone is sitting in a seat they paid for, and the only thing standing between them and the door is whether the person watching decides to step forward or look away.
Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about indoor plants. This one is a pothos. It's so easy to care for. It purifies the air and adds life to any room. I highly recommend getting one for your home.